I wanted to introduce myself to all of you and tell you a little bit about what my job is like. I wanted to tell you my experience when I was 5th to 8th grade and how I learned science and how I decided to become a doctor. I want to tell you a little bit about what I do for fun, because you actually do get to have fun when you're a scientist or chancellor at UCSF. It's allowed. That's good news. And I have a few videos of some of the other women scientists at UCSF who are the real stars of the show that I thought that you might enjoy hearing their stories. So I'm one of 7 children. I was born in Napa and I grew up in Reno. And because I'm one of 7 children, I was lucky enough to have a mom and dad who talked to all of their kids every night about what they did in school, what they liked, and who was good at what. So from the time I was really young, I was always the kid who liked math, just like my dad. My dad really liked math, and so did I. And I went into science and medicine because those were my favorite subjects in school, both math and science. I liked biology, but I especially liked chemistry. I didn't like math just because I could get an A, although I did like getting an A. I was kind of competitive in school. I just liked that you could figure things out and you could solve problems. And to this day, that's my very favorite thing, is solving problems. So the math I liked the best was geometry, because those were problems that I thought were a lot of fun. And I liked being able to figure things out, especially if, when I started, I wasn't quite sure how I would get to answer the problem. But when I was young, my dad would come home. My dad is a pharmacist, so he was in a pharmacy when I was growing up. And the part of the pharmacy that he ran, which I liked the best, was something called compounding. So compounding is when a pharmacist has a little mortar and pestle. It's a little stone bowl. And they grind up medicines and mix them together and make different formulas and potions for patients who are sick, like a cream or a remedy or a medicine you have to mix up. And my dad really liked that. It was his way of being a little bit of a mad scientist, grounding up these potions in the pharmacy. So I thought that was pretty cool. I liked the fact that he got to make things, and he got to make mixtures of things, little recipes all for himself. So I thought when I was growing up that what my dad did was really interesting. But what I particularly liked was when people would come and visit him in the pharmacy, he would get to mix these things up, and he would get to talk to people who were sick and help them become better. So I thought that that was great. And from a very young age, I wanted to be a doctor. So I knew probably from 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade, I wanted to be a doctor, even though I wasn't really sure if I could be a doctor. But since my dad was a pharmacist and worked with lots of other scientists and doctors, it seemed reasonable, and I liked our family doctor a lot. He was a good guy. I didn't know any women doctors, though, when I was a kid. Now there are many, many women doctors. So when I went to medical school and then came here to UCSF, I quickly decided I wanted to be a cancer doctor. And the reason I wanted to be a cancer doctor is I thought the patients were always the nicest patients. And I liked that. I liked that the patients were so kind and were having to deal with a really tough problem. And if I could help them, that would make me feel better and make me feel like I could do something special for them and be their doctor and hopefully help them. Either make them better or at least help them so they wouldn't suffer. I like that a lot about being a cancer doctor. So when I was at UCSF, and I especially liked the 2 speeches today because what Burke was talking about particularly resonated for me. People in Tanzania, kids in Tanzania, who didn't have a lot of assets, options, things that they had that were given to them. When I was at UCSF in the late 80s, I was invited to travel to Uganda, to East Africa, to be a doctor there. And that was great. I'd never been to Africa before. but I got to take care of a lot of people who didn't have doctors, and got to take care of cancer patients in Uganda, and particularly a lot of kids in Uganda who get a special kind of cancer that makes them have big tumors, but that you can make better. You can actually cure them, which is great when you're a cancer doctor, to make someone better. But while we were in Africa, we also got to go on safari, see some elephants, see a lot of animals. So if you ever get a chance, I highly recommend going to Africa. It's very exotic and very interesting. But we also studied HIV/AIDS and learned about how you could prevent people in Africa from getting AIDS. It was probably the highlight of my career. So today my job is at University of California running a big, large organization. How many people here have a parent who works at UCSF? That's quite a few. How many people here have a parent who works at Genentech? Ah, I probably know your mom or dad. So I came to UCSF again last year as the first woman chancellor, because I think the best thing that you get to do when you're a doctor is be at a place that makes great science, that prepares people to be doctors and nurses and pharmacists and dentists and researchers, and makes a difference in the world. So every day I get to see people at UCSF who make a difference in the world. And I think sometimes about how I really liked math and science, and now I get to think about how UCSF helps people, makes sick people better, improves people's health, and thinks about keeping people healthy, all using those big brains of the people who work at UCSF to help people. That's, for me, the best thing about math and science, is in the end, it isn't just getting an A or doing well in school, but you get to actually use that to help somebody else. And that's the reason why I came back to UCSF, because I like that. I like being around that. When I first started as a cancer doctor, it was very uncommon that you could cure someone with cancer. And today, we're probably 2 or 3 times more likely to be able to take care of someone with cancer. It's a lot less scary than it was when I first started out. It's still scary to hear you have cancer, but now I get to say more often, oh, we have something for that. We can do something. And that is a great part of being a doctor and leading an organization like UCSF. But we also get to have fun. So one of the things about my job, when you do a job like this, is there's lots of things that are difficult or challenging about it. And I always like to have fun every day. So every morning I get up and I run. It clears my brain, makes my heart beat, and it makes me happy. And every weekend I go out on my bicycle with my husband. That makes me happy too. I get to go and see all of California and travel around. So even though my job is challenging, I always have fun. And I try and learn something new every day. I think that's the best thing about my job, is I get to learn new fun things that I didn't know before every day. My husband is also a physician. He's a doctor who trained at UCSF. And he specialized, while I specialized in cancer, he specialized in HIV/AIDS. So today he's in Zambia. He works as a doctor who tries to prevent the spread of AIDS to children in Africa from their moms. So that's what he goes to work and does every day. It's great. He's making a big difference in the world. So he also liked science when he was in school, and he gets to use that science to prevent the most important thing that's killing lots of Africans and making a big difference. It's entirely preventable. So he's working hard so that when women are pregnant in Africa, they know how to prevent the spread of AIDS to their children. UCSF has a whole school now in global health to train people to work in developing countries like Tanzania and Uganda and Zambia, so that the developing world can have access to medicine and science and a lot of the things that happen that they don't have access to otherwise. So we have a new global health school at UCSF. I wanted to share with you some of the stories of some of my colleagues. And these colleagues were asked 3 questions. What do you do? What did you think about science when you were 12? And what do you do for fun? I wanted you to see how different things are for them.
My name is Hazel Desai, and I'm a professor in the Department of Bioengineering and Therapeutic Science at UCSF. And I develop artificial organs and new ways to deliver medicine into the body. When I was 12, I really liked the fact that with science you could build things, you could create new inventions, and something that I really loved to do when I was in middle school was to be able to mix things together and create loud explosions. I love to travel, explore new places, and I love to go to work every day. Science is really fun and exciting, but I can integrate it with everything else that I do in life.
My name is Mindy Goldman. I am a clinical professor in the Department of OBGYN, and I am a OBGYN. I take care of women, and my specialty is actually taking care of women who have a history of breast cancer or are at higher risk for getting breast cancer. When I was 12, what I liked about science was that we got to dissect a fish. And I thought that was the neatest thing. And I thought it would really be neat to be a doctor and maybe to get to do surgery. And also as part of my job now, I get to do surgery. And the human body is just fascinating. And I got interested in that by dissecting my fish when I was 12. Well, I have a couple little kids, and I love getting to spend time with my kids. And we go up to the mountains a lot. And I love to ski. I'm from Maine, and so as soon as I could walk, I was put on skis. So I love to go skiing, and I've now got my 5-year-old on skis so we can ski together. And so that's one of my favorite things to do when I'm having fun.
My name is Dorothy Jones-Davis, and I'm a postdoctoral scholar. I do research here at UCSF where I study how the left side of your brain communicates with the right side of your brain. When I was 12, I tried out for the softball team. My science teacher was the coach of the softball team, and she really encouraged me to try out for the softball team. I didn't make it, unfortunately, in the softball team. However, the good news was that she made me the head of the science club. And that incident really did well for me. It made me really interested in science. It was the first time that anyone had ever told me that I was good at something. And it really encouraged me to do the best that I could. So I came up with the best experiments I could think of, and I just really got interested in all of the different ways that I could be creative with science and try out new things. And it's the most memorable experience actually I've ever had. For fun now, I'm actually a mommy for the first time, and I have a 1-year-old. And so for fun, I actually play with her most of the time. But when I'm not being mommy, I really enjoy playing my violin, and I really enjoy reading. It's something that I like to read. The actual teen fiction is what I like to read.
One of the things I wanted to make sure you see in these stories is these 3 women do 3 very different jobs. An engineer who's making artificial organs, which is really interesting, an obstetrician gynecologist, a surgeon who's doing surgery and taking care of women patients, and a postdoc who's in the lab doing science in a lab setting. And my job, which is in an office with a computer and lots of people around coming to talk to you, giving speeches and doing things like that. So I'll tell you one more story, and then I want to take any questions that you might have. So I loved hearing the story about dissecting a fish. When I was 12, I was dissecting a frog. And my sister Judy was also dissecting a frog. So we had our 2 frogs, and we brought them home, and we stayed up late, and we were trying to remember all the different organs in the frog and putting pins and remembering what everything was. We were getting really tired. So we took the boards where the frogs were, and we put them in the fridge. And the next morning, my mom woke up and opened the fridge to these 2 frogs. So Judy and I were in big, big trouble. But we got an A, so we were really happy about that. So if you do dissect, don't put it in your fridge, or you'll be sorry. So I would be happy to take any questions. Does anyone have any questions? Don't be shy. There's a question back there. So the question is, do I ever think it's hard being the only woman? I'll tell you, I think it's, here's when I sometimes think it's challenging. I'll be with a group of colleagues, and someone will introduce me and they'll say, well, this is Chancellor Hellmann. And I'll see someone look surprised. And I'll think, I wonder why they're surprised. So I coach myself. And here's how I coach myself. I say, it's not they're surprised that I'm Chancellor because I'm a woman. They must be surprised because I'm so young. And it makes me feel better, even if it was because I'm a woman. When I was at Genentech, I worked on the executive committee. And the executive committee ran the company. There were 7 of us. For the last 5 years before I left, I was president at Genentech. And my 6 colleagues on the executive committee were all male. So one thing that would happen that I didn't like is we would take a break and we would go to the bathroom, and they would keep discussing what we were talking about in the men's room. And then when we would come back to the office room around the table, it was like I missed something. You know, something had gone on in the men's room during the discussion that I had to catch up. So I told them all, I said, okay, you guys, I'm coming in there. If you don't stop keeping the discussion going in the men's room, I'm coming in there. So they laughed, and the way that I told them, look, don't forget about me, is I just used humor. And most of the time in my career when I was the only woman, which happened to me a lot, I would try and have a sense of humor. Because most of the time when people goofed up, it wasn't that they were, you know, somebody who was trying to be mean to me. It was that they didn't notice, like going to the men's room. So I never did go in the men's room, just for the record. I never did. But I threatened. And it made them think, aha, we should think about Sue. Other question? There's a question.
How many years have you been treating cancer?
The question is, how many years have I been treating cancer? So, I'm doing the math, about 25 years. But when I was in medical school, I went to medical school, I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I wanted to be a sports medicine doctor because I really like sports. I like skiing and biking and running. But the first time I went into the hospital, my very first experience as a medical student, actually in the hospital, not the classroom, I worked with a cancer doctor. And I couldn't believe how much he got to use all the science he had learned. And he was really smart, and he got to use all this science to help patients. And as I said before, the cancer patients were so nice. There's something about hearing you have cancer that for a lot of patients, they think, you know, what am I going to do with my life? How can I be a special person? So I really liked that. So immediately I switched from being an orthopedic surgeon to being a cancer doctor. And so I've been one for about 25 years now. Yes?
What in the last few years has made it easier to treat cancer?
So the question is, what in the last few years has made it easier to treat cancer? So it's still not easy, but what's been the big breakthrough is that we now know, it used to be in the early days of treating cancer, we just had medicines that stopped cells from dividing. So cancer cells are dividing too fast. So we would treat with chemotherapy, traditional chemotherapy, to stop the cells from dividing. Well, you know, your hair and the inside of your mouth, those cells are dividing. That's why cancer patients can lose their hair. So it wasn't very, it was effective sometimes, but it would make people very sick. So the big breakthrough is figuring out what are the signals that make cancer cells grow. A growth signal. So if you know the growth signal, you could turn it off. It's like you know the switch, and you flip the switch to off. So people talk about personalized cancer medicine or targeted cancer medicine, and it's more precise. So the breast cancer drug that I worked on knew a switch for some women with breast cancer, and we turned it off, and you could switch the switch off without making you lose your hair or making you sick, because it was precise A big, big change, much, much better. Not only more powerful to hit the cancer, but many, many fewer side effects. So much better for people. One more question. Last question. You get the last question.
Is it hard to balance your job with your life outside your job?
That's a question. Is it hard to balance your job with your life outside your job? I would say sometimes it is. I always have felt, and maybe this is why I feel happy, even though I've been a doctor for almost 28 years, and I still feel happy and inspired, and not tired. And I decided after working really hard for a long time that I wanted to balance job and home. And that's why I decided every day I should at least do one fun thing for myself. And I started running in the morning because when you go to the hospital, especially when you take care of cancer patients, you just never know. Somebody could be very sick, and I found if I tried to do things at the end of the day, either something would happen and I would miss it, or I'd be really tired. So now I get up just like brushing my teeth, I go for a run. And it makes me feel happy and like I've achieved something for myself before the day even starts. But my husband and I try and plan fun things on the weekends or to do something. Even if it's short, that's fun. Because I think that's the hardest thing about working as a doctor is that it's not just work, there's a human being there, right? So you can really feel attached to your work, but you also don't want to burn out. So it is challenging to balance work and having fun outside, but it's important to do that. So most of my colleagues, I will tell you, the most successful people I work with, females or males, have figured out that they need to have a life outside of work that's happy and fun. And the good news is it makes them better at work, not less good because they're taking time off. So I always tell people, make sure you take your vacation and make sure you do fun things, because then when you show up at work, you're happy, and you're a kind of person I want to be around. So thank you very much for inviting me. And